2022 was a big year for the WWE, from having the first stadium show in the UK in over 30 years, to Vince McMahon being fired and Triple H taking creative control of the show. We saw many surprise returns and countless incredible WrestleMania quality matches. Here is a countdown of the best matches of 2022. Santos Escobar versus Ricochet. Friday Night SmackDown. Ricochet and Santos Escobar faced each other for the first time in WWE and gave the audience in Buffalo a show to remember. Both superstars have history with each other from their time wrestling with Lucha Underground, and the match on SmackDown had an undeniable chemistry that showcased how familiar they were with one another. Their match was the finale of the SmackDown World Cup tournament, created to determine the top contender to challenge Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. Both superstars used a variety of techniques to weaken their opponents that showcased their athleticism and in-ring strategy. The match came to an end when both men were tied up on the ropes, and Ricochet suplexed Escobar from the second rope, hit him with the Mexican super kick, and landed his signature 630 from the top rope to get the pin over Escobar. The crowd was on their feet for the latter half of the match, and they cheered for both men even though Ricochet won. Bianca Belair versus Asuka versus Becky Lynch. Hell in a Cell. Bianca Belair won the Raw Women's Championship back from Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 38 after she lost it to her at SummerSlam 2021. Since then, Becky Lynch had taken a major heel turn where she was spiraling out of control after the loss. Asuka made a surprising return to Monday Night Raw after being out for 8 months. Lynch took on the role of the heel in the match, using everything in her arsenal to try and get the title away from Belair. Lynch frantically tried to pin her opponents at any chance, but was unsuccessful. The three superstars tossed each other out of the ring several times so they could isolate one another and weaken each other. This match ended after Lynch tossed Belair out of the ring and landed her manhandle slam on Asuka. As she almost pins Asuka, Belair slides in and tosses Lynch out, pinning Asuka herself and retaining her title. The crowd chanted, "This is awesome!" at the trio as they gave it all during an intense match where all three women were able to showcase their abilities. The Bloodline and Sami Zayn versus the Brawling Brutes, Drew McIntyre and Kevin Owens. Survivor Series War Games. The Bloodline story was one of the most compelling of the year. Sami Zayn invited himself in as the literal red-headed stepchild of the Bloodline and gained the trust of everyone in the Bloodline, except for Jey Uso. Owens almost pinned Reigns, but Zayn interfered and grabbed the referee's arm just as he was about to tap the mat for the 3 count. Shortly after, Zayn took out Owens and let Jey get the pin by frog splashing him, proving to Jey that he was more than just a stooge for the Bloodline. The match ended with Jey Uso finally accepting Zayn in the Bloodline and giving him a huge hug. This match is an exceptional example of in-ring storytelling, and one of the best of the year for that reason. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. Clash at the Castle. Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns are two of the biggest names on the men's roster today. Reigns and McIntyre engaged in some heated promos and brawls in the time leading up to their match, which helped raise the stakes for it. The bell rang and began what would be one of the most important matches of McIntyre's career. From the start of the match, it was clear that McIntyre was going to be a threat to Reigns, but the pair kept it pretty even during the match. The crowd was on McIntyre's side, chanting his name for the majority of the match, and after McIntyre hit Reigns with a third Claymore, it looked like the match would be over. But before the referee could count to 3, Solo Sikoa pulled them out of the ring and saved Reigns from losing his championship. He finished with a spear and pinned McIntyre for the win. The Usos versus the Street Profits. Money in the Bank. The Usos have been the undisputed tag team champions since May of 2022 after they won the Raw Tag Team Championship from RK Bro. Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins of the Street Profits challenged the Usos to put their titles on the line during a Money in the Bank match. When the time came for the Money in the Bank match, both teams had been fueling the fire to win through intense promos and fights on SmackDown and Raw. The match started and both teams gave everything they could. It was a slow start, but eventually the crowd got amped up as the men used some of their best moves and even copied each other's moves strategically. After a double super kick onto Ford by the Usos and a 1D, Jimmy pinned Ford. The Street Profits would go on to challenge the Usos to a rematch at SummerSlam with a special guest referee Jeff Jarrett. Edge versus Finn Balor. Extreme Rules. The Edge versus Finn Balor feud is a great example of long-term storytelling in WWE. It was revealed that Edge was forming a stable known as the Judgment Day. Edge was ousted from the Judgment Day when Finn Balor joined, and the rest of the faction decided they didn't want Edge overshadowing them any longer. Edge disappeared for several months. months, but a series of cryptic videos hinted at a return from him. He eventually returned at SummerSlam to help the Mysterios in their match against Priest and Balor. With Extreme Rules around the corner, Finn Balor challenged Edge to an I Quit match. Edge agreed, and when the match began, it was clear that they would be leaving it all in the ring. It was a brawl from start to finish. They walked through the crowd and fought across the arena. Unfortunately for Edge, Beth Phoenix was targeted by Ripley with brass knuckles. And just as she was going to concerto Beth Phoenix, Edge said, "I quit." Ripley proceeded to hit Phoenix anyway. Balor won the match with the help of his Judgment Day allies, and Edge hasn't been back in the ring since. Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch, WrestleMania. Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair's feud dates back to SummerSlam 2021. She pinned Belair in 26 seconds to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. After the WWE draft, Lynch was swapped with Charlotte Flair and moved to Raw, where she got the Raw Women's Championship instead. Belair won the Elimination Chamber match to become the #1 contender for the title. Their match at WrestleMania 38 was one of the highlights of the weekend. Both women put their hearts into the match, and you could feel how dedicated they were to it. Belair and Lynch's in-ring chemistry is palpable, and fans were on their feet watching them fight. The match started with Becky Lynch landing a manhandle slam on Belair and almost scoring a pinfall, a callback to Bianca losing the title to her at SummerSlam. In an intense finishing sequence, Belair was almost counted out. She got back in the ring just in time and countered Lynch into her KOD and pinned Lynch to win the match. It was a magical WrestleMania moment that only fueled the fire between the two over the next few months. Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, SummerSlam. The match between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam had some of the most memorable moments of the year. Roman Reigns entered first in his usual style. Brock Lesnar entered next riding a tractor. It seemed at first like he was just leaning into the Cowboy Brock rebranding, but as the match progressed, the tractor became an important part of the event. The bell rang after Lesnar jumped off the tractor and on to Reigns. The match went off the rails when Lesnar lifted the ring off the ground with his tractor and Reigns tumbled out of it. Heyman was F5'd through the announce desk. The match ended when Reigns and the Usos covered Lesnar's body on the ground with all of the rubble and destruction of the match. Sheamus versus Gunther, Clash at the Castle. On the August 19th episode of Friday Night SmackDown, a fatal 5-way match was held to select the top contender for the Intercontinental Championship. Sheamus would come out on top to be the #1 contender. On September 3rd, they would do battle for the first time. Gunther and Sheamus were ruthless with one another in the ring. Both heavy hitters dealt brutal blows to each other. It was a powerful lariat by Gunther that ended the match. Even though he didn't win, the crowd cheered Sheamus away after he gave everything he could in the ring. Their feud came to an end at Extreme Rules when the Brawling Brutes defeated Imperium in a good old-fashioned Donnybrook match. Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes, Hell in a Cell. The 2-month-long feud between Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes began on the first night of WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes made a shocking return to the WWE Universe to face off against Rollins on the grandest stage of them all. Rhodes scored the first win in their feud by defeating Rollins at WrestleMania 38. Rollins continued his vicious attacks on Rhodes on Monday Night Raw, which led Rhodes to challenge him one last time. A match inside Hell in a Cell where both men would leave it all in the ring after. Days leading up to the match, fans learned that Cody Rhodes had torn his pectoral muscle, and no one was certain what that would mean for the Hell in a Cell main event match. Rhodes surprised everyone by deciding to compete against Rollins. The intensity for the match was set when Rhodes took his jacket off and showed the severity of his injury to the world. Rollins spent most of the match exploiting Rhodes' injury and selling himself as the ultimate heel, and Rhodes fought back hard, risking his own body to defeat Rollins. They used the cage to their advantage and found several weapons to use against each other. After 2 crossroads and a hit to the chest with a sledgehammer, Rhodes was able to score his 3rd pinfall of their feud. After the event, Rollins attacked Rhodes one more time, hitting him with a sledgehammer and stomping on his injured chest. Rhodes has been gone ever since recovering from his injury.